Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time out to be a part of my action research plan presentation. We have Mr. Render here. Good afternoon, Mr. Render.
Good afternoon, Mr. Johnson.
And Ms. Ryan, also the ninth grade math teacher. Thank you for joining me as well.
You're welcome.
All right, so the action research plan, you all have the slides in front of you. I've sent those to you, the PowerPoint presentation. So we're doing this, the taping through conference call as I'm recording it, and you all are following through with me. So moving forward, first slide with the research question. How will negative motivational strategies such as assigning detention and parent calls home, coupled with positive motivational strategies such as giving accolades, food and movie parties, and homework passes work to increase student attendance so they may receive instruction to improve their ninth grade math classroom grades? Also, the students' increased instructional and teacher supervised practice time causing an increase in their classroom grades. So just giving a little background, we've already dealt with this, but just I want to present the results. So giving the background piece first. We have Carver High School, obviously, is where we're all working with these students. 99.58 of the ninth grade students are black, 0.42 are Hispanic, 46.86 are female, 53.14 are male. The school population has 100% of the students receiving free lunch. 120 of the ninth grade students are enrolled in my math class. The members of the team include Mr. Dupree, Mr. Green, Ms. Grine, who's joining us, myself, Stanley. Also, ninth grade administrators are Mr. Pryor or Dr. Pryor and Mr. Render. As you recall, we had a teacher survey at the beginning of the year, and that teacher survey was given to the ninth grade teachers to address the needs that the PLC would address, where each category was rated, each need based on the scale, 1 being the lowest need, 2 being an intermediate need, and 3 being the highest need.
Yeah, I remember. Weren't there only 3 categories? I think I remember those.
Yeah, so that's the next slide. So take a look at the next slide, and you'll see, okay. Yeah, it's the side tutorial, attendance, where we're addressing the tardies and absences, and then classroom discipline behavior. And as you can see, the attendance was 1 out, if you will, overall, with the 2.7 average based on the survey results of teachers. Okay.
Yeah, I'm surprised the discipline and behavior category rated so closely to tutorial.
Well, yeah, and so when I talk to teachers about this, and I agree with it also, is that if we are able to get these kids in class, then we can deal with all the other ones and sort of take care of assessment. We're most of us are veteran teachers, so dealing with classroom discipline behavior wasn't an issue for us as so much as get them in the classroom to deal with their discipline and behaviors.
Okay. Did you show us these results before?
No. So, and that's one of the things. We had some pieces that we wanted to address and I add to it. We had a meeting where we were given further clarification on what was needed in this. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I added those pieces to it. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so looking at the selected data sources that we used was school attendance rate, Algebra 1 grade for ninth grade students, obviously the student survey, teacher survey as well. And something I negated to add on this was also the tardy logs as well, because that was a piece of what we looked at also. Here's some of the results for Carver High School in terms of math. I dealt with the grade, 8th grade, where they're beginning learners, proficient learners, developing, distinguished learners, and then the ninth grade students from last year just to see where they were, and then analytic geometry. Those are the students that had just gone through analytic or coordinate algebra and had moved on to the analytic geometry. The results for the ninth grade first semester tardy rates, we see an overwhelming number of students with 5 or more tardies, 63 students, and this is of our 120 students. We have transient population, so that number fluctuates, sometimes as many as 125, some as few as 118, but that's a good percentage of students, with 63 of the 122 being 5 or more tardies. And then the grades for fall of 2015, if you take a look, we've got 5 A's, 12 B's, 58 C's, and then we also have 47 F's, which obviously showed that we need to do something about getting these grades up. And our data showed that getting them in the class would be the first step. And then the next slide talks about the students. When the student survey, we asked the students, why are you late to class? Every ninth grade math student was polled, and we had 4 said they were with the teacher or administrator. 65 said they had no reason at all, or they just didn't know. 7 was a late arrival to school. 19 were in the bathroom for whatever reason, and 23 were friends. The other category that we had with 4 students were just various things that were not associated with those particular categories.
Yeah, the kids will be honest. Most of the time they'll tell you exactly why it is they were late with no reservations.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely our kids. So with our plan, we're providing both intrinsic and extrinsic motivational strategies, and obviously to enforce school policies. Continue with the plan description. We're looking to create a system that addresses the lower level of Maslow's hierarchy and address the physiological safety, belonging, esteem, fulfillment needs. And then I give a list of how we have been incorporating and plan to continue to incorporate this initiative. So our SMART goal that was created was that ninth grade math team members will design, develop, and apply extrinsic motivational strategies targeted toward increasing the instructional time for ninth grade math students by measuring the attendance rate with the goal for improving student attendance compared to the previous 9-week time period, with an increase in their math class grades by any measure more than the previous 4.5-week time period, starting at the beginning of each semester. So if we're looking at the timeline, began the semester going to the end of March, and then again, and this is where we are now, the beginning of April, until the end of the school year. And the process that we use to analyze the data and identify intersections. Prior to the implementation, we looked at the needs in the school. We met to discuss the problems and how we would address the problems, and different solutions based on the timelines that we were given. The role of us, the PLC, in using this data, tardies and discipline issues, address those through the plan, and also how we could address the issue collaboratively without increasing our workload dramatically. The different actions going into calling teams, tracking students, shared discipline, the giving of the small incentives, and then obviously the larger incentives to get the kids in class and there on time. And we've talked about this part before, and this might be another piece, Mr. Ryan, that I hadn't shared, but the results are overwhelming. We've gone from 5 plus at the end of January. There's only 10 students that has 5 or more tardies. Four tardies for 15 students, and in terms there being 20 students for 3 tardies. The biggest thing was the 1 tardy piece. We have 34 students, so that's huge. Now we have 5 students with 0 tardies, but that 1 and 2 tardy piece lets us know that they're actually trying now. They hadn't quite figured it out by the end of January. But then we look at the February results, and we see that we have a significantly more number of students not being tardy at all, with 18 students having 1 tardy, 9 having 2 tardies. Drastic turnaround. We've got over 50% of the students with 2 or fewer tardies, whereas before we had over 50% with 5 or more tardies. And then this past month in March, with the things that we're doing, I mean, the kids are getting to class. They want to be a part of what we're trying to do in terms of the incentives piece. And you can see now over 50% of our students have zero tardies. So we're obviously on to something, and we're working towards it. But as we talked about what our goals were, it's now that we've got them in class, how does that look in terms of increasing their grades and performance in the class? Well, after the first 4.5 weeks, we had 8 students with A's, 8 with B's, 47 with C's, and 59 failing. Now, that is a significantly larger number failing than was at the end of the fall. But, we've talked about this definitely after the 9 weeks. We've looked at how many are failing, and that number has dropped considerably. 38 with 46 having C's. Look at our A's and B's. We've got 15 with A's and 23 with B's. So that's definitely something to be excited about as we just ended our 9-week period with the students. So the process for analyzing data, identifying intersections. So after having implemented the startup, we met at the 4.5 weeks before, and we talked about how can we keep going, and we felt like what we were doing was working. So we continued that process, just doing it with more fidelity, just to make sure that the kids realize how important it is for us. And then, so talked about the logistics of the initiative, and how can we be more efficient? Because like I said, we're not trying to extend our workload, just make sure that we are getting positive results. And then when we meet in May, the end of our timeline, we are looking to discuss future implementation as well, and see about the extension of the program. And as we said here in this last slide here, how we're going to possibly extend it to the 10th to 12th grade, and make it more of a school-wide and not just a grade level initiative. So that's the last piece there. But before we end this, there's a couple things. There were concerns brought forth by my professor about this not being a grade level initiative. Now, I've had the position that because Ms. Grine, you and I both deal collectively with every single 9th grader in the building, that it is a 9th grade initiative.
Yeah, I would agree. So although what we're doing doesn't happen in every 9th grade classroom, it affects every 9th grade student. And to my mind, that classifies as above the grade level.
Yeah, and see, that was my thought as well. When I met with my cohort from West Georgia, one of my peer reviews said to my initial initiative of using every single classroom in 9th grade was that I may want to narrow my focus to simply one content area. And so that's what I did. I moved it to math. And so it was per their suggestion. And I thought it was a great idea, because collecting that kind of data, there would be things that we wouldn't necessarily be able to directly associate with this because they just may be poor readers, or science may just not be their thing type. And so, yes, they're getting in the class and it may not show the results, but here it is. We have an opportunity just to narrow the focus on what we're doing. Another concern that we had is that we employ a wait and see method to address the issues at hand. Wait and see.
But we're working the program. What are we supposed to be doing?
Well, and I agree. I wholeheartedly. So let me ask this: before we have those timeline meetings, mid-semester, end of semester, and we did the beginning of semester, are you doing anything in your classroom differently than simply waiting and seeing, I guess?
Well, on my top 20% wall, I've changed it a little bit to include all students passing. And so the students get really excited about seeing their names up there.
Okay. Yeah, and so I've noticed that too. It's a big thing about them kids having their names on the wall. So what I've done actually is the tardy piece. I've extended it so it's not just those getting recognition for zero tardies. They get recognition if they have one tardy, and it hurts them. It hurts them to see their name pulled off, or even drop down from zero tardies to one, and then from one to no tardies. So that's something I've been doing. Like I said, it's about every month we'll do that.
How would you feel about us updating it weekly?
Actually, I think that might be good. Because so the kids, if they mess up in the first or second week, they won't be like, "Well, it's ruined for me for this month." So yeah, I think that would really do well for them. Mr. Render, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So I have to have you respond to 4 questions as we conclude, and then we'll be done.
All right, not a problem. Go ahead.
All right. So the first question is the project appropriately addressing an area of need in your school or district?
And unfortunately, tardies have been a major issue at Carver, so yes, it's addressing the need.
Okay. And then the second question, what challenges, difficulties, or pushback have affected implementation of the plan?
Initially, Mr. Johnson, you expressed difficulty in getting the other departments on board, but I haven't heard any problems since you've isolated the research to your department.
Okay. Next, what next steps, if any, do you see as valuable in carrying the project forward?
I would like to see how we can work to make it school-wide. I know you mentioned that it's an option for the upcoming school year. The last meeting we had, we spoke about this, and I'd be interested in working with you to see that happen.
Okay. And then finally, what strengths do you see from the candidate, I guess that'd be myself, as I facilitate implementation?
I'd say Mr. Johnson has the respect of his colleagues, and that goes a long way in leadership. Though. I've also seen Mr. Johnson start taking the theory that we've all had in our leadership trainings and put it to practice. He'll make a fine administrator in the near future. we could definitely use him at Carver.
Okay, well, I definitely appreciate that, Mr. Render. And I appreciate the both of you all for taking time to be a part of this presentation. Thank you, and you both have a good evening.
You're welcome.
Bye.